If we go way back, how does it start? So you a timer begins when you start the certification process, or how does it?
Yeah, you have 1 month to deliver the whole certification test
Okay.
from the day you receive the download link.
Right.
It consists on two parts.
Okay.
One is troubleshooting, where they send you a PDF file saying we encountered this and that problem on this project, which they send you the gateway backup,
Right.
and you have to see what is causing those problems. Like, for example, the user with the administration role can't access to this part of the solution. What is causing this? And you have
Oh,
to like imagine what could possibly
the case.
cause,
Yeah.
and you have to type a document stating the solution and how you resolved it.
Okay.
So they teach you like how to report any issues that you encounter
Hmm.
along the way, and they also make you think what could you do to resolve those issues. That's part one.
Right.
Then there's the second part where you have to create a project, and it has to meet certain aspects that they write on the PDF,
Hmm.
like having a database and tag historian, and you have to have an easy chart, an alarming status, and the navigation, perspective, window, view.
Right. Right.
uh, it's the same as the vision, but they're called view.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you have to also see that those elements work, and there's a lot of coding in it, which
Okay.
I wasn't accustomed to. So
And
it
so
was
so how was that part there? So it's divided in two, right? There's a designing aspect and then a coding aspect.
Yeah.
Or
Well, the troubleshooting part is mostly coding related because the problems emerge
Mhm.
on the this function is not working as expected. So design wise, it's little to no part on the troubleshooting,
Okay.
but on the second half of the test, there is a part of design involved, but it's not as important the how you do it, more than you need to have a display. Okay, you can have a display.
Hmm.
They don't say we need a black background, white background.
Right.
You That depends on what you want and how you want to display it.
Yeah.
But the core of the test is the coding.
Okay.
Um,
So that's the main focus that you have to go through.
yeah. This if you don't know coding, you're gonna have a bad time.
And
But
you're not an
uh,
actual coder, right? You're not educated in computer
no,
science and all that stuff.
not at all.
So
Not at all.
how did you approach that? How why was it
Um,
difficult or
well, I don't shy away from a challenge,
right?
but it requires a lot of logical thinking. Like when I first started using Ignition around 2 years ago,
Hmm.
yeah, 2 years ago,
Roughly, yeah.
and the basics I had for coding were web related, which doesn't translate into almost anything in Ignition because it's another language.
Right.
But I kind of knew what was like a link or a binding or
Hmm.
those things. Still, I had no. I still read some things and I go like, this doesn't mean
You
anything
have
to
to
me.
Google it
I
though.
don't know what I'm reading.
Yeah.
But um, I used a lot the user manual for Ignition,
Okay.
like all the definitions, how to write expressions. and the videos from the Inductive Automation University.
Yeah, so that was a great source of inspiration for you to get through all
Yeah,
this.
find my way through
Yeah.
certain aspects. Like they mentioned, we need to use an easy chart on the test, and so I reviewed what the lessons of the easy chart were saying, and I tried to, okay, this is what it's expected.
Right.
So it was a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
A lot of error.
Yeah.
A lot of error.
On the coding part, I mean,
On the coding part. No, the design part is I'm good there. I'm very good there.
Yeah.
But still, I've learned more things about the design aspect on these few months, having perspective in mind. A lot of the knowledge that I now have was accomplished by trial and error on the perspective module a few months back.
Okay.
Because that's when I actually started seeing the logic of passing parameters or having this and that binding, indirect tag binding and all that allowed me to complete the core test.
Right.
Because if I didn't know anything about indirect tag binding, I would still be doing the test and missing the deadline.
Yeah.
Because that's not something I used to do a while back. Like I could bind the navigation to the window, very basic design related bindings that allowed me to move through the whole project, but nothing really involved with the data per se.
Okay. So what would you say was the most challenging thing about this whole certification process?
Well, for me personally, it was the running the database on MySQL in my computer, because I still don't know how I managed to pull that, but that's something I have no clue about, like running a server.
Yeah.
I had to find a lot of tutorial videos, and even when I did exactly what they said, it didn't run. But that was because of the driver thing on the gateway.
Right. Okay.
Those were 4 days wasted on why is this not running.
Yeah.
But I even had to update the operating system of my laptop because it had a it was good because I had to.
Okay.
I was out of date, so it was a happy ending, and it didn't run. I tried on my work's computer, which is Windows. I said, well, Windows is a lot more friendlier than Mac on that behalf, and it didn't run. Really? So until I had to install the driver, and then it ran over here as well. And I said, okay, this was the toughest part, even though they say that you don't need a running database to do the test, but there are some things that need to have a database in order to implement on the test.
So it was actually outside, like you had to set things up outside of the test to do the test. That was the most challenging part.
That was the hard part, because as I said, this is not my native language in the sense that I don't know what I'm reading code-wise. So it's I don't know how to define most of the things I do. I just know how they work, but I don't know like how to express what they mean.
Okay.
It's very intuitive.
Yeah. So if you could go back a month and then give 3 good advices to yourself, what would that be? As a non-engineer approaching this certification process, what should people know about?
Well, I would say, first of all, tutorials do work.
And is that
They are
YouTube or is that the university?
both.
You both.
They having to solve things outside of the test
Hmm.
per se. YouTube helped a lot, and with all the ignition things, obviously the go-to guide
Yeah.
and the videos
Hmm.
helped a lot as well.
Okay.
I would have to say that be confident because I started very, very insecure.
Okay.
I even said to John that I wasn't sure if this was going to work because I was scared that it's not. I actually thought it was like the courses, like you would watch a course and answer a test,
Okay.
and that's it. I didn't know that they send you something like
Whole
hands-on, an
project almost.
example, yeah, a real job,
Right.
a real project.
Wow.
Um, so I got afraid because I said, well, I don't know much of bindings and all the coding. So I was very hesitant. But as soon as I started reading the PDF document, I said, well, I know how to do this. So let's start with this.
Right.
And then I went, okay, this, I think I know how to do this. And little by little, reviewing the courses, I found out that I actually understood more than what I thought. Because when I first took those courses, I was obviously not involved in Ignition, so I was just watching videos and saying, I haven't even opened the platform, so
Yeah.
I don't know what they're saying. But reading, going through them once again, it really jogged my memory, and I said, now I understand what this is.
Hmm.
Also, that's tip number one: be more
Okay.
confident
Right. Starting
than
with I can do this.
yeah. Tip number two is having in mind everything that you've done so far, even if it's not directly connected to what is asked on the test.
Okay.
For example, an experience that helped me a lot to understand the whole coding was playing around in the perspective module, because I went into it, none of us had very much experience with that module, so I had to learn, and I wasn't able to actually ask anyone else because none of us had a real understanding. So
Sure.
I had to go, okay, what does this do?
Right.
And when I started experimenting with perspective, there wasn't the guidance on the ignition page. They didn't have the guide or the videos to
Right.
go along, so it was very beta at that point. It
Yeah.
was on a beta phase,
Right.
so I understood what parameters were. That module actually helped me visualize a lot more what the coding actually did.
Okay.
So it didn't, the part of the test that has any perspective module implications is really small. It's at the bottom of the second part. And I actually got that done really quickly, even though when I started experimenting with perspective, I didn't even know how to do a view. So at that moment, I said, well, thanks to this previous knowledge, I can understand a lot more what is being asked.
Right.
So having in mind everything that you've learned, even if it's not related at the first glance,
Yeah.
is really helpful.
Okay.
And another tip would be to be patient.
You
That's
have.
really
I
difficult.
mean, yeah, you have a month, and you are like a week early almost. How? So
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
time.
and actually the test says that you can finish the whole core test in 2 days if you know what
If you
you're
know what
doing,
you're doing,
obviously.
yeah.
So I said, okay, I have a month, but months by so fast
Yeah.
that you don't even notice, and even more so when you have a limited time
Right.
schedule
When the
and
deadlines.
you
Yeah.
don't actually know the coding part,
Yeah.
because this is mostly coding. So if I knew how to write expressions or do this, it would be a lot easier because I don't have to think and rethink and research all that part.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's really once you understand the logic behind a basic binding or a basic expression, you just have to put the pieces together. Like it becomes almost a logical process where you just see the matrix and
After
understand
you've
even.
experienced, after
Yeah,
you've played
yeah.
around with it, I guess. Yeah. You
It's
start to.
fantastic, and it's very rewarding to see that what you think isn't going to work actually works.
Right.
So you're like, oh, it was this easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but you have to be patient and you have to research and research a lot and then go and try and fail and try again and then find out that you're trying to bind the thing to a part that you didn't have to bind it to, and experiment.
And
It's all about experimentation.
yeah. And would you say that a month is enough for all that, or would you have prepared a little more if you knew what you were going into? Like, can you
No,
prepare for this, or should you just start it and go along with the ride?
well, depends on how you learn, on
Right.
your learning process.
Okay.
Because I'm personally one. I like to just dive in and start messing around with everything
Hmm.
and see what works and what doesn't. Other people rather read a lot before going into the practical part.
Right.
But I think that even if I had prepared, I wouldn't have been prepared for
Yeah.
the test, because I can say, okay, I watched all the courses and I did all the tests,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that I know the real know-how
Yeah.
once I'm on the practical side.
And I guess
So
it's very different when you have a concrete project to work on. So you get
yeah,
handed this concrete
totally,
project, and it's difficult to play around with something without having a context for the tools and
totally.
modules.
I think I learned a lot more doing this test than I did by watching the videos
Hmm.
and doing those written tests or easy simple selection tests
Right.
that the university offers. Uh, I must confess that when I did those tests, I was overlooking a lot of the coding part and just centering more on the design aspect,
Hmm.
because that's what was important for
Right.
me.
Your competence.
But not having interacted with the platform prior to those tests did limit the learning curve a little bit for me,
Hmm.
because I need to know what they mean by this binding. Okay, what is a
Yeah.
binding? Let's do this while watching the videos.
Right.
Mhm.
Cool. And now it's done. When do you get it back? When do you get the course certified? You just submitted it, right? A few days ago?
Yeah. They say that you need to allow them a month
A month.
to review. Yeah, to review all the stuff you did
Right.
and if it works.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of tests coming in, so they can give you a straightaway answer.
Right.
But
There's a
I'm
queue.
hopeful.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it worked.
Perfect.
So fingers crossed.
Can you, is it something you can test? So when you were done, could you press a button and things were running, or how does that work?
Yeah. Well, once the database got going on my computer, I actually could see the
Code
or
was the code was executing
the
and
yeah, the pens
Mm.
and the lines on the easy chart and how the alarming worked because at first you have to set an alarm status table and they should go off if the values change. So at the beginning I was like, am I doing this right? And then the alarm table started popping up and I was, okay, it works. And then you can touch a button and change the status of a machine, and so you see that the alarm went off because
Mm.
you have to set it to go off if the machine is on this state and not this state. And yeah, it worked. It's
Awesome.
amazing, but it
Yeah.
worked. Yeah.
What about time wise? How much time would you say you've sunk into this? So you've been working for
But
3 weeks now, I guess,
yeah,
since the 18th
yeah,
of.
I did around 1 hour, 2 hours in every day after work.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, the thing that cost me the most was figuring out the bindings. As I said, if you know what you are doing code wise, it's easier.
Yeah.
uh, because I had to go through all the courses and the guide and everything.
Yeah.
But the actual application, I think that they are right when they say that it could be solved in 2 days if
Okay.
you know what you're doing.
Right.
But
So it is literally
yeah,
just a question of figuring out the
hmm,
different
yeah, it's
modules
more
and
the research
yeah.
that takes time. And as I said, I invested around 3 to 4 days
Yeah.
finding out why the database wasn't connecting. So
Right.
that was time lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Is there anything you want to add to the whole process? Would you would you do it
Uh,
again if you knew what you were getting into?
yeah, totally. We'll do it again because it was really, it was frustrating,
Mm.
but it was fun.
Cool.
Like it was a challenge and
Yeah.
you say, I can do this. I know I can do this. This makes sense. I know this can make sense, but I would do it again. Yeah, totally. And it was, if you know where you started and you see back to that point and you see how much you've evolved, you are constantly motivated to keep
Mm.
going because you see that a month ago you wouldn't understand that this did that,
Basic
and now
terms and
you're
yeah.
just like,
Cool.
I have it
Awesome.
present every time. So
So it's not a
actually I
it's
have
not really a
been
test.
working
It's
on, yeah, I've been working on the new projects that we have with the clients, and some of the bindings just come right up on my mind, like, and it taught me a lot on the design aspect because now I know which components work
mm,
best with which type of binding. So there's a lot less trial and error on that aspect because sometimes it happened that I used a button and the button wasn't working properly
ah,
because you had to use another type of button.
right.
So now I know.
So even though it's very code focused, as a designer, you've actually learned a bunch that's useful for your work.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Cool.
It, it uh, being the center of the platform, it really I, I forgot the word, but it really expands to all the other aspects.
Right.
It's not just the coding; it's the coding and how it inflicts on the design, how it inflicts on the navigation,
Mm,
and it truly, if you approach a project with the coding as the center, everything else just falls into place rather than forcing the coding into all the surrounding
right.
things. So that's a new approach,
Yeah.
and having that in mind, it's easier for me, even though it takes longer because I have to really think how I
Right.
think it could work. But once you start that, you don't have to change much of the visual components.
Cool, awesome. It sounds like an amazing learning experience. I might even do it
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, yeah. Learning is always nice.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, I think that's all I got, Jessica. Thank you for speaking with me,
Thank
and have a good weekend.
you. Likewise.
I'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.